Hey everyone, as the thumbnail for this video hints, I have a couple new parts on the car, including a new intake manifold. After the last event at Brainerd, I had to replace the cam position sensor, and since the car has 200,000 miles on it, I decided to take the opportunity to replace all the other sensors as well. And since most of those are underneath the intake manifold, I also decided to do the M50 Intake Manifold swap. For those not savvy with BMW jargon, an M50 is an earlier version of the M series engine which has much larger intake manifold ports, so installing that manifold onto the later engines, like the S52 in my car, supposedly offers significant power gains in the higher RPM ranges. So, as part of this little exercise, I ended up replacing the cam position sensor, crank position sensor, knock sensor, coolant sensor, and Vanos oil line, as well as doing a heater core delete and installing 24-pound injectors along with the DME Tune, in addition to doing the intake itself. With all that, is there any actual difference on the track, you wonder? And the short answer is not really. While there are some differences in the engine's characteristics, it was certainly not earth-shaking, and I didn't see a significant reduction in the average lap times or the segment times versus my other events at the track. That being said, I don't know that DCTC, which is a 1.2 mile course with 15 corners, is really the ideal testing ground for a modification of this type. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when I get up to Brainerd next time, where you have much more time at wide open throttle through turns 1 and 2. Anyway, even though I wasn't knocking 5 seconds off my lap times, it was still a pretty good day out in Rosemount. Despite not being that much quicker, the new sensors and injectors did have the car running really well. So here are a couple of highlights from the day. So a little bit less traffic in that session, and was able to get some pretty good lap times, no doubt thanks to the tow from that Champ Car team right ahead of me. But I'll take 106s and 107s in this car any day. So all in all, great day. If you live in the Twin Cities area or in Minnesota generally and you're interested in this type of thing and you haven't checked out Gary Curtis Driving Experience, definitely do that. They run a really great event and run about once a month, so check them out and we'll hope to see you at the track. Till next time.